Hello, Debt Warriors, and welcome back to another episode of Millennial Debt Domination. I'm your host, Katie O'Shea. Today, we're diving into a challenging yet important topic, shopping addiction. Shopping addiction is a behavioral addiction where compulsive buying becomes a way to feel good or to escape negative emotions like anxiety or depression. Like other behavioral addictions, it can become a preoccupation that impacts other areas of your life, including your financial well-being. In this episode, we'll explore the roots of shopping addiction and discuss ways to understand and overcome it. I'm joined by Joe Gustus, a supervisor and training administrator at Navicore Solutions. Joe has taught classes on debt addiction and has done extensive research on shopping addictions. Together, we'll cover how to recognize when shopping habits have crossed into addiction, how it can impact your financial health, the concept of retail therapy, and much more. Now let's dive into my conversation with Joe. Hi, Joe. Thanks for being on the podcast today.
Sure, no problem. Nice to be here, Katie.
I am looking forward to talking today. We're going to be talking about shopping addictions, which we have not talked about at all in this podcast. I'm really looking forward to learning more about it. So to start, what exactly is a shopping addiction and how does it differ from normal spending habits?
Yeah, absolutely. So, shopping addictions typically can be defined as some kind of an addiction that somebody has to either purchasing items or obtaining items that they're spending a lot of money on, and they just feel that they're not able to stop. So it's something that they feel is out of their control and they want to stop, or in some cases they have the desire to stop, but actually calling it quits and being able to end the cycle of addiction can be very, very difficult for people who are really struggling with a shopping addiction.
And it definitely seems like there's a lot of emotions involved with it. So what feelings do individuals struggle with when they have a shopping addiction? Like what emotions do they feel when they want to shop?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, when they're in the throes of some kind of a compulsive buying or a shopping addiction, usually they're trying to, in a way, react to very uncomfortable emotions that they have. So sometimes that could be anger, it can be anxiety, it can be depression, it could be hopelessness, and a lot of the times it's also shame and guilt. And just a lot of those feelings are very uncomfortable for people to really to deal with and to cope with. And one of the ways that they find that they're able to help themselves feel better is to buy something. And it gets out of control usually when they find that they're always doing that or doing that most of the time to try to really help themselves feel better rather than get better, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So are these feelings kind of like triggers for people? Like, is that what triggers them, or are there other things that trigger them to want to shop?
Well, definitely the emotions can be a huge trigger, and also the events that cause the emotion can also be a trigger as well. I think a lot of a lot of times people are just very impulsive. So they make impulsive purchases without really thinking about, do I really need this item? Do I want this item? Because sometimes there's actually people out there who, if they see there's a coupon for something, or if they see that there's a really great deal out there for something, they might just want to jump on it and just buy whatever they want, but they don't really ask the question, do I really need this item? Do I really need, this set of bedroom sheets, that I'm not really, looking to buy. Am I just buying it because, yeah, I scored the great deal with the coupon? So I think impulse plays a great deal with it as well.
Yeah, and do you think that the rise of maybe online shopping has contributed to people's shopping addictions? Because like you had just mentioned about the sales stuff, that is so addicting, especially when you get the emails. You're like, well, have to do it, have to shop.
Oh yeah, absolutely, 100%. It makes it so much easier for somebody to just click a button and then you get it sent to you. You don't even have to leave your house to buy something. And with a lot of these different kinds of companies that are out there now, like Instacart, or even for meals like DoorDash and things like that, it is so easy to have things sent to you where you don't even have to leave the comfort of your own home. You can just click a button and then it's brought to you. So it makes it really, really convenient and easy and very tempting for people.
Right. It almost seems like it's the norm to do all this online shopping and stuff now. So how would somebody know once their their interest in shopping has turned into an addiction, has crossed over the line?
Normally, it's when they feel that they're out of control and they can't stop. Sometimes it can be precipitated by just getting all of these bills in the mail for credit cards. We get a lot of people who call in to our company who, when we ask them, did something cause the credit card debt, they will actually say, I just have a shopping problem. I can't stop buying things. And that's very common, actually. So sometimes just getting the bills will give them a bit of a red flag saying, I really need to get some help with this. A lot of times also people will hide packages that come in the mail, or when they bring stuff home, they'll hide them from their family members or from somebody else who's in the household. When somebody starts doing that a lot, that's usually a sign that there could be a bit of a problem. So some of them are obvious, and then other things can just be very subtle, where it can be an indication that there could be an issue.
And do you find that a lot of people like have multiple store credit cards and that can also be kind of like a sign like it's just getting out of
Yeah.
control?
Oh yeah, definitely. And not only just with charging on a lot of store credit cards, we talk to a lot of people who have tons of store credit cards, and the reason that they have them is because they wanted to get approved for them. It's really about when you're buying something or when you're trying to get approved for a credit card or to get credit, it becomes a bit of an addiction when they get such a rush out of it by either getting that purchase or by having that, yes, you're approved for the credit card, you can get your 40% off your first purchase using this credit card. So yeah, it's all about that kind of positive rush and that intensity of positivity that they get from it, which unfortunately wears off with time.
Yeah, and actually that rush that people feel, is that like a psychological factor or an emotional factor that drives someone to have a shopping addiction? Are there any other factors?
I think both of them are. I think it's psychological and also emotional, because studies have been found that when people actually buy something and on a repeated basis, they get this rush of dopamine in the body where it becomes almost like it's they're getting these feelings where it's a really positive sensation, and not only does it help to quell those negative emotions temporarily, but it gives them a high in a way.
So we talked about I had mentioned about the credit having opening store credit cards. Obviously, racking up a lot of those store credit cards can put you into debt. So how does a shopping addiction impact someone's financial health, but in both the short term and the long term?
Well, in the short term, one of the things that we found is that it can cause them to incur a lot of debt if they're charging everything on credit cards. So over time, they can wind up in a situation where they just have so much credit card debt that they're not able to keep up with paying all the debt. But the other thing that we've noticed too is that a lot of people who do have really serious shopping addictions, that can lead to what's called hoarding, where they can wind up in a situation where they have so much stuff that they don't even know what to do with it. And that happens quite a bit with people that we've spoken to. I've been here at Navicore for about 24 years, and I started off as a credit counselor, and I did counseling for a really long time. And I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to who have said, you know, I have a shopping problem and I just can't stop, or I've had too much on my mind that has led me to retail therapy to try to feel better, and now I got myself in a really difficult situation. So, yeah, the debt and also the hoarding can be a huge issue, with time.
Yeah, actually, I just want to touch on that term retail therapy. I feel like people just use it all the time and they think it's no big deal, but it
Yeah.
obviously can turn into one.
Oh yeah, very easily. It's the reason they call it retail therapy is because the idea of it is to do something nice for yourself, to treat yourself and do something to help yourself feel good about yourself, which is perfectly fine. But exactly like you said, if somebody does that on a continued regular basis, it can cause them to really wind up in a really bad situation.
So if you're noticing like a friend or a family member mention that a lot, like, oh, retail therapy, is that one of the signs a friend or family member can tell, like, okay, my person has a problem? Like, what are some signs that loved ones can look out for?
Yeah, that could definitely be one of the signs, especially if they mention it, on a consistent basis that oh, I went on a shopping spree or I bought this or that. Sometimes also if it's other people within the household, if you notice that they are incurring a lot of charges when you happen to be looking at receipts, that could be a sign that the person, has a bit of a shopping addiction. And it can also be like we were talking about before when they're hiding things, when they're sneaking packages in or they're getting stuff mailed to the house, but you notice they run out to the mailbox or they run outside to get it and they're hiding it so that you can't see it. Those can all be different signs that somebody's in the throes of addiction. And of course hoarding as well. A lot of people, if they see that the person just has so much stuff and they don't know where to put everything, and then it gets to the point where it's drastically affecting the family or the household, that's definitely a red flag right there.
So what can a loved one do maybe to point it out or help that person?
Well, sometimes it can be difficult because the person can be in denial that they have an issue. The person who actually admits, I have a problem and I want to do something about it, that's somebody who is most likely going to get the help that they need because they've actually come to terms with the fact that it's out of their control. So, one of the best things to do is to just have an open conversation with the person, that I'm really concerned about this. I want to make sure that you're okay and that there's nothing here that's going to jeopardize your well-being and our well-being if it's a family or a household. And if that doesn't work and there's a situation where the person is in denial and they don't want to go along with getting any kind of help, sometimes it's actually recommended that the person actually speak to somebody in a mental health professional setting. There's therapists that can help with this. There's a whole form of therapy called cognitive behavioral therapy that is designed to help people specifically who have addictions. And there's also groups out there. There's something called 12-step groups. Like, there's actually a group called Debtors Anonymous that somebody can go to. It's actually an offshoot of Alcoholics Anonymous, AA. It's called DA, and that's a group that sometimes can help people if they're in the throes of some kind of a debt addiction or a shopping addiction. It's not for everybody because there's certain components of it which are not necessarily things that everybody would believe, because they do talk about faith and a higher power, and sometimes that can turn people off a little bit. So we usually recommend, if we're ever suggesting to anybody that they explore any kind of a group like that, if they've asked us about getting that kind of help, we'll say to them, just check it out, see what it's all about, and if it's not for you, you don't have to go back. But if it is for you, that's great. So there's lots of different things out there that people can explore.
Right. So those groups can maybe help someone with like their mental well-being, right? And maybe get them to stop their addiction. But so Navicore is a great resource for people to rebuild their finances afterwards. Like, how else can people rebuild their finances after?
Yeah, if they're in a situation where they're really struggling with either spending problems or with any kind of debt problems, the first thing we recommend that somebody does is to call us and speak with one of our certified counselors in the credit counseling department. We can do a counseling session with that person, and we can definitely take a look at what they're going through. Our counselors are very empathetic and very patient, and they're trained to really pinpoint and target any kind of issues that the person might be struggling with. So if the person mentions that they do have a shopping addiction and they want to get help with that, we can give them resources that go a little bit beyond credit counseling that might be able to help them outside of our organization. And as far as the debt goes, we have something called a debt management plan that they can consolidate all their credit card debt into one payment, and the credit card companies will offer benefits to try to make it easier for them to pay back their debt, like they lower the interest rates and they lower the payments, and they also stop any later over the limit fees. So that's something that can be a tremendous help to people.
Yeah, and I was just thinking, do you think that people might not even realize they have a problem until they like reach out to Navicore and see like all of their credit cards laid out? Like, oh my goodness, like now I really might have a problem. Is that like eye opening for them to see all their statements laid out like
Definitely.
that? Yeah.
When someone talks to us, we go through a personalized spending plan or a budget with them. We pull their credit reports, and we also try to really look at what's going on with everything. And sometimes when we really talk to them about what we see, it's like an aha moment where they didn't they're like, "Oh, wow, I really didn't realize it was like this." and and they really will see that they're spending a certain amount of money on something in their budget, and they'll say, I never knew how it could add up to so much. And usually those things that add up are the miscellaneous expenses, and those are things that usually
You
can
don't
lead to
budget for.
compulsive
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
exactly, right. Yeah.
Wow. So, reaching out to a credit counseling company such as Navicore, going to one of the programs for mental health help are some steps you could take to break free from the shopping addiction. Is there anything else you can do to break free?
One of the things that we also talk to our counselors about, besides the what we've just spoken about before, is that sometimes if somebody is really spending a lot of money and they are aware that they're spending a lot of money, sometimes just writing it down, meaning anytime you go out and spend money on something or you make a purchase, we have something at Navicore called a tracking book that we send out to clients free of charge. That tracking book is designed for somebody to write down anytime they spend money on their miscellaneous expenses. The more they get into the habit of writing those expenses down, the more aware they become that, wow, I'm spending a lot here and I didn't realize how much I'm actually spending. And this can be not only for buying, items, material items. This can be for things like going out to get fast food every day. It can be for going out and getting coffee every single day. That in itself can be a compulsive shopping addiction if you're spending a lot of money that adds up. Like if we total it up for a year or so, if we're talking like over $1,000 spent on coffee and fast food, that could be a sign that there's a problem. So we recommend that they try to track their expenses and just really become aware of where their money is going.
And tracking your expenses is a great way to create your like a budget. So, are there any other practical budgeting strategies or tools to help somebody prevent their compulsive shopping?
Besides tracking the expenses, one of the best things that somebody can do is they can really try to get familiar and aware of what their monthly budget looks like. A lot of people who contact us really have not had very much experience with budgeting their money, which is one of the reasons why they might be in a situation where things got out of control. So when we go through a counseling session with the person, we send them a copy of the personalized budget that we created with them over the phone. They can use that as a tool to see how much money they have coming in every month and how much they have allotted to spend every single month. And if they really try to stick with that budget and stick with that spending plan, and they make sure they don't go above and beyond that, that's really one of the best things they can do to make sure that they're not going overboard by charging things on credit cards or spending money that they don't have. So using that budget as a tool can sometimes be a lifesaver for
And
people.
we kind of mentioned earlier that people might have a shopping addiction because they have stress or they're dealing with other emotions in their life. So once they've overcome their shopping addiction, but they're maybe still feeling that stress, what are some healthier alternatives that they could do instead of shopping?
Oh yeah, there's a number of really great things that people can try to do. Not even so much from a counseling perspective, but one of the things that I've always read about that can help people who have any kind of like any kind of a serious addiction, and shopping addictions can absolutely be serious, is to find what's called a vitally absorbing interest. Something, whether it's a hobby or whether it's something that really you feel a passion about, if you can throw yourself into that, whether it's something like exercise or painting, or for me it's music and movies, that's always been my big passion. Some people like to get involved with causes, they like to volunteer and do things like that. Anything that you can find that you're really, really passionate about, where you can throw yourself into that without having to make it an addiction. Sometimes just distracting yourself and finding something else that you really like that brings you a lot of joy and a lot of feelings of fulfillment can be a very good alternative to stopping that addiction cycle and doing whatever it is that you're doing that can be harming you. If it's something like exercise, that's actually a great thing to be getting into because it's very healthy and you feel really good doing it. It's not always easy, but you feel good, you know.
Yeah, and then it's just so once you've overcome the shopping addiction, would you recommend like maybe deleting some of those apps off your phone, like store apps and stuff that you found yourself shopping from? Is that helpful for people or
Yeah, it never hurts. Yeah, because anything that can be a detriment to your mental well-being or your financial well-being, sometimes it's good, like you're saying, if it is an app on your phone, just get rid of it for a little while. You could always put it back later. We tell people this as well with things like social media in particular. If we find that people are really affected by the news being so negative or by negativity on social media, just get rid of it for a while, and you'll be amazed after 30 days about how much better you'll feel because you're not subjecting yourself to that negativity. So it's kind of the same thing with the shopping
well,
addiction
I
too.
mean, yeah, and social media basically might not help your shopping addiction. I mean, not because
No.
you see a sponsored ad everywhere, but you can also just see like, oh, that person has that. Maybe I need it too. It cannot help. I mean, can't see it being
Yeah.
helpful to somebody who's struggling with a
No.
shopping addiction.
No, definitely not. And it also doesn't help that when you go onto a lot of these platforms, especially things like Facebook or even you know X or anything like that, they know what kind of advertisements to give you
Oh yeah.
because they know about what you're interested in and what your history is and everything, which is kind of creepy that they do that. But also
It's so
that's a way
crazy.
that they make you, yeah, it really is because it gets you.
Sometimes I feel like
That's
they're
another
just
way. It's kind of
listening.
like, oh yeah, that right. It's almost like they're kind of like knowing everything that you do. So, sometimes it's better just get rid of that thing off of the phone and just for like even for a month, just get rid of it and see how much better you feel after a while.
Yeah, and then see,
Yeah.
especially after you're having a shopping addiction, and once you've broken free of your shopping addiction, how can you change your mindset around shopping to promote healthier spending habits? Because I can imagine it could be scary almost to shop again after you've overcome it.
It's just a matter of being aware in particular. We tell people, and this might sound very much like common sense, but we always tell people in particular when we find that their grocery expenses are extremely high, because maybe they don't know how much they're really spending in groceries. We usually tell people don't go to the grocery store when you're really hungry because that can cause you to spend more than you would normally spend. And what we also tell people is don't go out and have a shopping spree when you're feeling really upset about something. It's understandable that when someone's upset about something, they might want to buy something to help themselves feel better. But if you find that you're doing that a lot, that could be a problem. So we usually tell people instead of going out and shopping if you feel really bad, find a little more of a constructive way that doesn't involve spending money that you might be able to feel a little bit better. And also it can help you get better in the long run.
I think people definitely don't even think that there's emotions involved with shopping necessarily. Like, "Oh, I'm just going to the
Yeah, no.
store." But
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it can be, especially the grocery store, there's so many options. I try to make a list and really stick to it at the grocery store and not even go down aisles I don't need. So,
That's a great suggestion too. Yeah.
yeah,
Stick
do that.
using that list and
Make a
sticking to it.
list. Yeah, I usually always suggest
Definitely.
it, making a list for everything. But Joe, I think you answered all my questions about shopping addiction.
Okay,
Thank
good.
you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Yeah, you're very welcome, Katie. It was my pleasure.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. This is definitely going to be a really helpful topic for everybody. So thank you for being here.
You're very welcome. It was great being here.
Thank you. With the convenience of online shopping, shopping addiction is more common than many realize. Not only can it impact your mental well being, but it can also have serious effects on your financial health. If you're struggling with a shopping addiction, consider reaching out to Navicore for support. We offer resources to help you overcome these challenges and take control of your finances. As always, you can find Navicore's contact information in the description of this episode. And that wraps up another episode of Millennial Debt Domination. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening. And if you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please rate and review us there. I'll talk to you next time, Millennials, Gen Z, and everyone else tuning in. Bye.